Welcome. It's time to start a brand new series for the months of July and August. I'm Mindy Turner, your Curry County Cooperative Extension Service Family and Consumer Science Agent. So for this series, we're looking at some ideas related to quilting. Now, we all love quilts. They have historical significance, family heritage significance, and I know some ladies who make phenomenal, beautiful quilts. Everyone doesn't necessarily sew or have the space and the place to do it. I would love to make quilts, but with two teenagers at home, I don't have a place to pull out the machine and get to do all of those things. So we're going to talk a little bit about some crafty ideas, fairly inexpensive. Maybe you have scraps and items around that you can use. They can make great gifts. They're things that you can keep to decorate your own home, however you choose to use that. But these are going to be no-sew items with a quilting theme. So super fun. I hope you find something that you enjoy and would like to make. Today we're going to talk a little bit about barn quilts. Now, we did this as a workshop not too long ago. We had so much fun, everyone putting their barn quilt square together. So barn quilts are exactly what they sound like. It's a quilt square that goes on the barn. And historically, those were established. Each family would create their own and have that as a significant piece of their ranch, their farm. It identified them in some way by the colors, by the pattern, whatever it was that looked like. So you don't necessarily have to have a barn, but you can put a giant plywood size square on to have your own barn quilt. Now you can do that, and the techniques we're going to talk about today are very similar to what you would use to make that big one. We're going to do it a little bit smaller. So we are just looking at, these are just 12 by 12 pieces of wood. These are unfinished wood we purchased in a set because, like I said, we did a workshop. You can pick these up any craft store, the discount store, kind of all around, and you can choose again your size. The 12 by 12 is nice because then you can also, if you wanted to frame this to hang it, you can just purchase a 12 by 12 frame, or you can just apply a hanger to the back where you can put it up. So we have several different options, things that you can look at. It's really a pretty simple process. You don't have to have a lot of supplies. You may have some things laying around that would work specifically for this. So this is the initial one that I did. You can see the yellows and the greens. This was done, my office is sunflowers. I know a lot of you know if you've been by to visit. And so to match kind of that motif, that specific theme. But you can choose whatever colors, whatever you like. If it's just something, my son worked on some as well, and he just picked a color palette that was interesting to him to give it a little bit of a pop and a little bit of a look. And then he kind of even tried just, hey, let's just use all the colors. And it came out kind of neat, kind of fun. We said we had a lot of different styles and techniques used in the workshop to put them together, and they all turned out beautiful. So the way you do this, there's several options again for how you lay it out and how you start. So these are actual stencils made to go on this size. So that's something that we picked up. You can cut your own stencil. You can purchase or cut vinyl stencils that are for one-time use where you stick them on, paint around that, and go on. Or you can just measure out a ruler and a pencil. You measure out your design. We do recommend, this is just some painter's tape. Tape off your squares for whichever color so that you get a nice crisp line for how you're gonna do that. Even with the stenciled one, I did that on some of mine. So basically then you just decide, if you want just that wood finish, which you can see, that's what this is. It's just the plain wood behind it. Now you can use a primer depending on the piece of wood you've got. These were not that porous. The colors popped and turned out great. So we did not prime all of these, but you could use primer on yours if you think you're gonna need that. If you decided that you wanted to have a background already on there, this one was just painted solid white and allowed to dry. It's that easy. If you want your color to be beige or brown, or you want a darker color on the back, whatever you would like is the way to do it. Typically, we're gonna see the wood finish or the white in the ones that you see if you go on a barn quilt trail, which they do have all around the country, including the Hondo River. Barn Quilt Trail here in New Mexico that you can travel. That's typically the backgrounds and the types that you will see. So what I did, like I said, let it dry. If you're in a hurry, you can always pull out the hair dryer, or we're having some nice, beautiful sunny days here around Clovis. Lay it out for a little bit, just when the wind's not blowing, of course, just long enough to let it dry completely so that you can go back and add your next piece. So you can see the stencil, it's hard to see on top of the white. This was just one of our regular stencils that I used, and I just traced it off. I'm hoping you guys can see where my lines are. Lightly with pencil to be able, because we want to reuse these stencils and keep using them. You can also, if you paint on them and then when you're done, you can wipe them down and take the paint off. That works too. And then you can always just go over the stencil. If you are going to use the stencil itself, again, grab your painter's tape, tape those edges down good so that it's not going to move. And you're going to want to make sure you're applying some pressure here in the middle so that you don't have gaps where the paint runs down under your stencil or under your tape. So basically, you can choose your brush, choose your paint. Looking at this one, I thought, you know, we could do kind of a red, white, and blue theme. So I have to go with my white. I just have some red and some blue, super simple. Paper plate, put some paint out on it, scoop that up. So brush-wise, whatever brush you are comfortable with for painting. I really like these foam brushes, particularly for filling in large areas or working around the stencil. But I also know when you're trying to get a sharp line, you may need an edging brush. Partly, again, what we had in the stash is what I have out to use, things that we could just pull out. We didn't go out and buy a bunch of new brushes to paint and make these. So just having the options to look at that. You, again, can choose whatever pattern. I found this buried down in our stuff, but it includes in here a lot of different quilt patterns, things you can look at. So you're not limited by what is here. One of our participants actually did her family crest on her tile, which was absolutely gorgeous. So think about what can be something fun for you to give and share with someone, or like I said, to decorate your own home. Super simple. Once you get all of your colors applied, I do recommend do one color at a time, let it dry pretty well before you start on the next one. And then just some type of a sealer. This is just an acrylic sealer. You can use wood sealer. Some people, like if you use the light wood, would want to stain it and use a stain. Any of those things will work. This is a very versatile project. Very much use what you have on hand to showcase your personality. It does not take a ton of artistic talent. It does take a little bit of patience, I will say that. But a simple product that you can put together, slap some paint on there, and then end up with something lovely, a beautiful quilt piece that you can give, gift, keep for yourself, and you can even copy if you have a quilt, maybe you have a quilt your grandmother made or that was passed down through the family, and you can copy those squares onto these. A simple way that you can share that maybe with cousins or other family members. So some things to think about, gifting wise, things you can do even if you don't sew. If you have a very limited amount of space, this is something you can set out and finish in a couple hours, clean it up, and be done. I'm Mindy Turner with the Curry County Cooperative Extension Service. This has been part one of our no-sew quilt crafts, things that you can consider, think about, maybe save a little money on giving gifts and decorating your home. I hope you will join us back here next time.